Welcome back to Light Talk, where the paranormal and the supernatural is a part of everyone's daily life. If you have a story and you want to share it, email me at lighttalk423 at gmail.com and we'll get you on the show. Well, we have a fantastic guest today, and we've he's come back on the show, and I'm excited to have him back on the show. So let's get started because we've got lots to talk about. So go ahead and introduce yourself and let's start.
I'm Michael Kopf, and I'm a paranormal investigator slash podcaster, and so excited to be back on, and always enjoy being on your shows, Dana.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure having you on it. We always have so much fun together.
We do, and I was sitting here thinking about what to talk about, like what story to bring up, and I've been working on one of my four books, and full disclosure, I was telling Dana backstage that I was working on one book and split it into four books. So,
Yeah. So what others paranormal stories do you have? I know you have a lot, so
well, a funny story I have that an experience that I had was I was working with a location and we were cleaning up this area because we had two guest investigators coming for an event that night. And we were opening this section up finally to the public. Everybody's been wanting to go in there, but we just never had time to clean it. So we're like, we're going to do it now. Now seems to be the best time. And it was a hospital that was no longer used, and it had its own crematorium and ovens and everything. And so the crematorium had been cleaned, the hospital had been prepped, but the ovens were untouched. So we spent all weekend getting the oven area cleared, and the day of the event, we're finally getting everything cleaned up out of the way so people could walk in and out and get, not feel like they're crowded out or really not supposed to be in there.
mhm.
Well, I go in with one of the guest speakers, and she's, talking about doing her thing, and I shared with her that this is, the first time anyone's been in here. Nobody's investigated this area yet. Tonight's the first time. And she's like, "Oh, that's really cool. I wonder what's going to happen."
Right.
Well, I'm standing farthest corner from the door because I'm envisioning everybody's grouped together. We don't have to worry about people coming and going. And she gets ready and she does this meditation deal where she gets everyone centered, visualized, ready to
Mhm.
accept everything and whatever's going to happen. Well, while she's doing that, I see this white coat run across the screen. And like I'm looking at a window, and I start in my mind going, "Oh my God, is that person coming in here? They're going to open that door and close that door, and that noise is going to interfere with what our guest is doing.
Yeah.
I can't get over to the door though because I had to walk over people,
Ooh.
and I don't want to interrupt what's going on." And so I'm like in my mind going, "Oh my God, how am I going to handle this without disrupting, being the least amount of disturbance?"
Yeah.
And so the funny thing is, they never enter. But there are things blocking the windows, so I could not see outside. The white coat that I saw was in the room with us and was running between what was blocking the windows and the chairs. And I
Oh,
realized this, and I'm like, I just saw an apparition in this room, somebody rushing out to leave. And they're in a white lab coat. And I don't know if it's male or female. It was too quick to get that image.
right.
But so here's where the funny part comes in. The guest speaker finishes her meditation deal and says, "Okay, now has does anyone sense anything or seen anything?" And I go, and I look at her and I go, "Well, yeah. While you were doing your thing, behind the two people in those chairs, I saw this white jacket or like lab coat go running out the door, or, seemed like, and I thought it was outside." And she goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Why didn't you say anything?" I said, "I didn't want to interrupt you." She goes, "From now on, interrupt me."
Wow.
And so that's like a joke we have between us now, is I was trying to be respectful and she's like, "I really wish you would have been disrespectful and interfere, and said something, then
Yeah.
holding it in, and everybody missed out on potentially seeing the apparition."
Oh, oh, yeah. But I mean, you were thinking of being polite, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, of
And she
course.
said she appreciated me not, being respectful and not disturbing. But that's an instance she's like, "Next time that happens, do interrupt me."
That's
Because
funny.
that's something worth interrupting. I'm like, okay.
All right, now we know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what else do you have?
Let's see. So, oh, here's a good one for you. This actually, I have not talked about this on any interview yet. Ooh, I can say exclusive to you right now because I haven't talked about it. But so I was in Tucson, Arizona last month, or actually, no, we're in June. So 2 months ago on a road trip. And I was with Jeff and his wife, Pam, and they were showing me these lights that appear and disappear. And I was like, "Are they coming from the ground?" He's like, "No, they literally just appear and disappear." And in my mind, I'm like, "Okay, if it's a crat, it's got to be coming from somewhere." And they're like, "It's not a crat." But I'm like, even a being has to come from somewhere. So I was like really intrigued and like really wanted to see what was going on. And I get there, and so how the night unfolds is we discover my brake lights don't turn off. They're not turning off. And so I had to go. Thankfully, AutoZone was open, and get a brake switch and got it replaced. And my brakes were turning off and the light switch was working. And so I was like, okay. So I had
Hmm.
seen what they wanted me to see beforehand, but was super distracted by the car now because I was like, I'm in Arizona. I don't live here. I don't know who's going to fix this. I don't want to wake up, to a dead battery. That'll
Right,
ruin my
right,
trip in a heartbeat. So
right.
I get it fixed, go back and join them. And I'm like, okay. And I tell them I got it fixed. They're like, cool. So we're looking out, and this is the same night the Aurora Borealis is supposed to be
Mm,
visible in Arizona if you had the right cameras. And so I'm using my phone, and I think in one photo I may have caught a slight greenish tint to the sky, maybe. It's hard to determine, but
right.
what I was witnessing was the sky would be totally clear, and then there would be a light that would start to show up and get brighter and would just stay still and then just disappear. And
Hmm.
I'm even looking through a camera zoomed in on it. And I'm like, these things literally are coming out of nowhere, lighting up, and then disappearing. And I'm like, these are not craft. These are not beings. What in the world are these? And we spent like maybe half an hour to an hour total looking at this. And the amazing thing is, we're on the top level of a parking garage by a hospital. So you know
Okay.
that's super well lit up, right?
Right, right.
We still can see this, and off in the distance, you can see down below the lights of the city, and then it disappears in one side. There's a spot that's super lit up on the ground, and you're like, what is that? And they're like, oh, I think that's mining or construction or something over there. I forget what it was, but there was a reason that was lit up. And I'm like, okay, what is this dark spot I'm seeing in the center over here? And they go, that's a mountain. And I'm like in my head going, okay, mountain, base. The ships could be coming from the mountain. And I would
Hmm.
follow some of the lights and they would disappear behind the mountain. So I'm like, okay, theory one could be, they're connected to the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, what about all these lights that are appearing off to the left of the mountain, aren't going to the mountain, actually going away from the mountain, but are appearing lighting, getting brighter, then disappearing. And I'm like, so not attached to the mountain, but they're around a mountain. What is going on here? And finding out nearby there were pictographs of crafts too. Like they were showing, I think in the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch episode, they hit on some in Arizona, and
Oh,
Jeff
wow.
had found some of those, and I didn't get a chance to see the pictographs, but I'm like, I'm looking at these lights, and I'm like, totally blowing my mind because I'm like, cannot explain what I'm seeing, but I'm seeing it literally right in front of my face, and I'm like,
Okay.
seeing is believing, but believing is not necessarily seen is what's going through my mind. And I'm like, I am seeing this. I believe I'm seeing what I'm seeing, but I can't explain what I'm seeing. So therefore, can I believe I'm seeing what I'm seeing? Is what
Yeah.
starts questioning my head. And I mean, I'll share more about that in my paranormal book when I get to adding that to it. But how the trip unfolded was it actually led to another experience that I was excited for, and that was so the next morning we got up, drove to Utah to meet a friend of mine, Madelle, and she has a deal where she can call in any interdimensionals that are around. And I'm like, oh,
Wow.
this ought to be interesting to experience,
Yeah.
and she's like, anybody can do it. I'm like, I want to know if I can. So we get there and we go to this reservoir after meeting at the hotel and grabbing dinner. So we then check in, get situated, go to this reservoir, and all of a suddenly it just starts getting freezing cold. And we're like, where did this cold air come from?
Wow.
Then it starts to rain, and we're like, and the rain is starting to turn to snow a little bit. We're like, what is going on? And we're playing with ghost apps on our phones and trying to see what's going on around us. And all of a suddenly, it's like, I can't make this up. A car drives from the building that's to the right of us, that's like the restrooms and everything, drives down this path. And it looks like he's literally put his front wheels in the water of the reservoir.
Huh.
And we're like, dude, your lights are on. You know you're driving into water. What are we watching you trying to commit suicide? Or are
Oh
we
no.
watching like somebody being murdered, so to speak? Or what it's like all these thoughts are like running through our mind. What are we seeing? So we finally look at each other and the apps are like danger, alert, kind of like messages coming across, and we're like, we need to get out of here. So Dell and I are
Yeah.
like, yeah, we need to go. We drive back to the hotel. Don't know what happened to that car. And that was freaking us out because we're like, how do we explain, we just saw the car just literally drive into a reservoir. How do you explain that to someone and not sound crazy? So we're like, let's just get out of here. Let's just get to the hotel and, regroup there.
Did you go
So
back and check
Medell and
on
I
it?
are, so we did go the next morning
Okay.
to go and see because the weather had cleared up and everything. And we're standing out there and there's low clouds and it's pretty cloudy, but we start to play this music. And I was like, not the music I would expect for spiritual energy work, but I was like, it had cool rhythm, so I was like, I'm game, let's go.
Okay.
And all of a suddenly clouds start parting. And I see
Hmm.
her doing her thing where she's, looking at the clouds and I can see them splitting. And I'm like, that's really interesting and cool. And I looking at the water in the reservoir, and when I say water in a reservoir, I mean it's literally landlocked, man-made reservoir with a
Uh-huh.
little island in the center that just, I think, just naturally accumulated. But there's an area where the water is going like this, swirling from
Hmm.
left to right. And I'm like, okay. And then I look and a little bit closer to us, the water's going like this. And I'm like, wait a minute. Water doesn't go in two different motions in the same spot. And then I look
Yeah.
and there's a spot where the water's going like this. And I'm like, now there's three different ways the water's going in a small little area. And lo and behold, there's a fourth pattern where the water's doing what it wants. And then the rest of the reservoir is just kind of still, just being there. And I'm like, this is really weird how
Yeah.
he's got four different weather patterns appearing in the water. And she goes, yeah, you know what that, and I'm like, I'm feeling it going, yeah, those are energy vortexes, I think, under the water. And so I'm like, this is really cool to see it. And I didn't film it. I wish I'd had filmed it, but I was taking pictures, but not of that.
Of course.
But I did take and try to photograph something rather unique that we saw. And I found it and I brought her over to look at it. There were weird etch markings in the soil under the water. And I was like, a bird could have landed, maybe left that mark. Who knows? But it was definitely not naturally made. Something had to make it.
Wow.
Well, off to a diagonal of that is water that's going like this, like a normal pattern of wave coming in and going out and coming in.
Yeah.
Well, in the middle of it is a piece of wood where you can see the tip of the wood is on the soil, literally just sitting on it, not in it, on it. And I'm making that a point because what I'm about to tell you defies all science. The rest of the wood attached to that point was at a 45-degree angle, staying totally still in this water that's moving back and
Moving.
forth. But this is not moving and it's perfectly balanced on its tip. The rest of the wood has nothing touching anything. And I'm looking at this and going, this is impossible. And even she looked at it and was like, what in the world? And we're like both looking at this from every angle, trying to figure out how
Right.
is this stick doing this? It defies everything. Well, then we decide, okay, enough looking at the water. What we wanted to see was the sky. And so I'm noticing some of the clouds are moving around and they're starting to pick up speed and everything. And I'm like, so what's going on? Well, we look up and I take with my camera phone pictures where the clouds, you kind of have the sun coming through
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a circle. And so you're like, okay, that could be gate or portal, or, it could just be the clouds naturally formed a circle there because the sun's beaming through and heating the air. I don't know. I'm not a science guy, so I can't explain what makes clouds move.
Right.
But what's interesting is we took pictures. Normally, when I take pictures like that, I look at it and I'm like, there's nothing there. Oh well, move on. Well, this time I was like, no, you gotta super zoom in. And I was zooming in to the max level. And I kid you not, I have a photograph that it looks like there's a guy standing on a cloud with his arm up to another cloud. And I'm like, wait a minute. And it's blue. The guy is like a bluish tint matching this. It's like just a little offset color of the sky. And I'm like, what? And I show it to her, and she's like, you got it. You've seen them. You've got a picture of them. They're there. There they are. And I'm like, this was the trippiest thing I ever experienced. And so I keep taking photos and I keep looking, and I'm like,
Mhm.
sometimes I got something, sometimes I'm like, not really anything there. So we did this for like 20, 30 minutes, and then we're like, okay, let's go get breakfast. And I, then we're like decompressing and like sharing what we had just experienced. And I was like, yeah, I don't know how I can explain to someone what we literally just did other than going, again, I seen it. I
Yeah,
was
right.
there. That's all I can tell you. I can't explain what happened, how it happened, who was there. I'm like, and
Yeah.
it's like, and how wild is it for 2 days in a row? Well, actually, a day and a misfire and another day. Although you could say the weather doing what it did was a paranormal event because, I mean, it was just came out of nowhere. Just all suddenly, the weather just was like, nope, you guys are absolutely leaving. Let's go. We're making the weather, so you guys go.
And that I've heard that happening when you have like um UFOs coming around or even Sasquatch coming around. The weather will change and just instantly. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah. And,
Hmm.
and I know listeners are sitting here going, well, how do we know none of this hasn't been doctored up and,
Right.
this or that? I'm like, I wouldn't even begin to know how to doctor up and be able to create this. And
Hmm.
Medell has a friend who does quantum pictures, and she sends her pictures to him, and he comes back and says, this is what you saw, but this is what the camera saw. And you get a whole nother more like two or three layers of what is around.
Wow.
And that
Wow.
wasn't even the
Mhm.
trippiest thing that we discovered. The thing that we discovered that was the most interesting was she found, when we say, oh, I feel like there's something around me or something in me that feels different. Well, she had me take a picture of my right eye. And when I say a picture of my right eye, I mean the camera was literally right here to photograph my eye. There's nothing else around that it can see. It literally is seeing just my eye. And we zoom in on it, and in the iris is an upper torso and a head. And I'm like, is that a spirit being? And she goes, yeah. And I'm like, and I'm sitting here, and my first thought is, oh, so there's a spirit being behind me. And then I'm like, wait a minute. This is a
Inside
photo of
you.
my eye. This is not able to see behind me. It's not able to see anywhere except the eye. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, that was a little creepy to me and going, what? And so she was like telling me, yeah, you have to have bright light and it works better if you film. And so I do short video. And one day I was like, well, it's kind of dark, but I feel like there's something. And so I did the eye test again and I was still able to see it. And what was
Same
even
one.
strange, same one,
Okay.
maybe a little different location, but same eye. And I sent it to her and I was like, hey, this was taken, with low light, but look, it still has this or this. And she's like, oh, that's cool. Did you happen to take video? And I was like, no, I kind of just took still pictures. She's like, well, it's better if you do video, but okay. That's really cool that you caught that still.
Yeah.
And what's interesting too is this part under my eye, when I was taking the photo in the dark, it had like a purplish hue to it. And I'm like, my eye does not have a bruise or anything on it, but why does the camera make it look
Hmm.
like? And I was like, it's interesting the shadowing that appears there. And then I'm like, wait a minute though. There
Right.
couldn't be a shadow line there because the phone is blocking any light. It is the light.
Oh,
So
wow. Oh,
it's an interesting phenomenon. And, you know, what it is, I can't explain it and I don't know, and I'm not saying this so that people start taking photos of their eyes and going, "Oh my God, I have this in me or this in me." I'm like, that's not what we're saying. We're just saying it's interesting what the camera picks up in your eye that may or may not be there. And it may be what we think it is. It may not be. It could be a spirit guide. It could be, someone looking out over you and
right.
showing themselves in the eye so they're there.
That's so
But
cool.
yeah, I don't want everyone to start freaking out and going, oh my God, there's something in me. I need to get it out and start freaking out and going to the doctor to go,
Right.
you need to get this out. Here's proof. Look at it. And being like,
Right.
no,
It's
that,
different. It's not that.
yeah.
Very
Yeah, but I
awesome.
mean that was yeah, and I think it's so amazing that when you sit back and you look at the world around you,
Mhm.
and I know there's a lot of people out there who are going to sit there and go, well, none of these are paranormal experiences because paranormal is, you're looking at ghosts and talking to spirits. And I'm like, yes, that is part of the
Right,
paranormal, but the actual definition of paranormal is anything aside from normal, which I sum up as unexplained. So if
right.
it's something unexplained, I put it under
It's
the category of
paranormal.
paranormal. So
Yep.
therefore, the experiences are paranormal, and it just is. I even go as far as to sometimes I'll say, yeah, it's fringe paranormal. It's not your normal paranormal. It's on the fringe. A lot of people don't like to go there, and that's fine. I'll go there. I'll have fun with it.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to. You have to, because not everybody will believe this. And it's okay. It's who they are, it's where they are in life. But we know this is happening. We know it's out there. We know. We
And it's like,
know.
yeah, and it's like I say on my podcast show when I have certain guests on and I know what they're about to share is really going to push the limits. And I will simply say to everyone going, look, these are the experiences of my guest.
Hmm.
We are not here to prove or disprove. We are
No.
just sharing their experience. And so these
Yep.
are my experiences.
These are
If
your
you believe
truths.
me, great. If you don't, you know, that's fine
Move
too.
on. Move on to the
But
next show.
yeah, but yeah,
Right.
don't go attacking
No,
because you don't agree with, because that's not the intention. It's like,
absolutely. Absolutely.
but yeah.
Yeah, I've taken a picture and it was kind of crazy. It was a picture of the clouds and it was a white cloud and a dark image in the midst of it. And it looks like a man either painting, like he's got a paintbrush and he's painting, or he's trying to open up a door. I'll send it to you. It's really one of my favorite ones. I've got
Yeah.
that one's probably one of my favorite ones. Yeah.
And I just thought about something too as we're talking about, these are our truths and our
Hmm.
experiences is I am familiar with the theory of I think it's called pareidoia, where the mind will look at an image and create what it wants to see out of it, like matrixes something out of nothing, so that you feel like, yeah, I've seen this because someone so said it's there. Well, that would not be the case for my experiences because nobody told me what I was going to be seeing. I saw it for myself before being told what it was. So it's not
Yep.
like I sat there and was like, okay, yeah, I was told this, and so now my mind's making it appear, and yeah, I'm totally, getting sucked in because this and this and this. It's like, nope, it was all blank slated, had the experience, then found out, and there is a difference too because pareidoia a lot of times is just you see like a cloud and you go, oh, there's a rabbit
Hmm.
because the cloud looks like a rabbit, even though it's just a cloud. But it's different when you're looking at, like, I'm sure when you saw guy that looked like he's painting, there's an energy to it. And there's a different feeling than when you're looking at the cloud. So that's the other reason why I say I don't believe it's pareidoia, because there's no energy attached to the pareidoia phenomenon when you're looking at something and making something out of nothing. There's no energy as far as I've ever experienced. I don't know about you, Dana, but I mean, that's another aspect of, if you're feeling something, there's something there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely agree. Absolutely. Even though it's slight or heavy or what. I mean, we go to garage sales and the last two estate sales that we went to, instantly, I had the last one, I had to leave the house because it was getting pretty strong for me. It's like I was starting to get dizzy and everything. So I just left the house. I walked out of the house. I had to get out. But yeah, you feel it. You know it. When you feel it, when you hear it, you know it when it happens. Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I think, too, a thing that I've noticed recently that I'm undergoing, and I don't know if it's just me or if other people are, I'm sitting back and noticing, as I do these shows and do my own shows, I will haphazardly say, yeah, I had this experience, move on,
Mm-hmm.
or had this happen, move on.
Mm-hmm.
Don't really delve into it. And this year, I was like sitting down and I was talking with Molly, my friend, and going, there's impacts to everything that we do that we don't share with everybody. And I think that's kind of, now that I'm looking at it, a disservice, because like I can say, haphazardly go, yeah, I seen an apparition go by
Mm-hmm.
in a building. Okay, yeah, cool paranormal experience. But if I say, yeah, I saw this go by and the impact of it was, I kept it quiet and everybody missed out possibly, and this and that, and the whole story that's to it, there's more, I think, energy and context to it that people are like, oh, that, is similar to what I experienced over here. It's different, but similar.
Right.
I'm glad I'm not the only one experiencing that. And so I think it makes it more relatable. And I think it gives better context to what we do other than sitting in a room, getting communication, moving on. It's like, no, if we share the impact, we share the whole context of what happened, I feel like people understand more what we're doing and why what we're experiencing is affecting us and making us go, ooh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. And going, that does sound really interesting. That could be really cool to do. Or, well, maybe, I'm still not quite so sure on that, which is
Or
fine.
no, or just blunt no,
Yeah.
no, not believing it. It's not real. It's not whatever. I just don't want to hear it. It could be something like that too. But that's like, this is what my show is about. It's just telling the stories, letting people know the stuff is out there. And if they have the same type of story or something similar, but absolutely different, you know how it goes. Um, this is what it's for. That's what this platform is for.
Right. And the beauty of it is your show, like my shows, I feel somebody could be watching it today and going, oh, I don't believe any of this. And, this is all whatever. And then 6 months, a year, or a week later has an experience and they're like, wait a minute, didn't I just hear something about this on a show? And it'll be triggered back to the show. And they'll be
Hmm.
like, oh my God, I'm not a believer, but I now am in the plausible scenario where maybe it's real. I'm not wanting to commit to it. And that's the beauty of the shows and why I like to do the shows is because the information is out there. So when
Right.
people are ready, they can watch it.
Hmm.
But if they're watching it along the way, the seed is being planted, and what happens to that seed is up to the individual. Would I like it if all the seeds like planted and flourished and brought people more awareness and doing their own homework? Yes, but am I going to take that on as my main purpose? Absolutely not, because I would go insane.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody has their own truth, their own story, and you can't down them for it because everything's going to be maybe so much similar, but it's going to be completely off. It's so weird how that happens, but it is. I mean, it's so very similar, but
Right.
not
I
even
mean,
close to the same story.
and not only that, but what are the odds I'm sitting here on an unscripted, unplanned episode sharing the story of seeing a figure in the clouds, and you're like, I saw a figure in the clouds. What are the odds? It's like,
Yeah.
we didn't plan it. We didn't sit
No.
there and go, hey, I had this experience. You got something to go with it?
Right. Right. Yeah,
So,
it just brings it out. It makes people think about things that they've had. It just opens them up more when they listen to these shows. It opens them up. It raises the vibration of Earth, and it's raising their vibration to be able to open up and experience all this cool stuff that's out there that we all can do.
and I have an episode I pre-recorded because, so the funny story about what's coming up is on the 18th, I pre-recorded an episode with these two guests because they do a podcast show that day, and we would be ending their podcast, starting my podcast right on top of it. And I was like, that would just be too stressful and too, hard. And so we agreed, let's pre-record my episode and we'll do their episode live. So I'll be interviewed by my guest the same night I'm interviewing them on my show. And I'm like, what are the odds of that happening? And you're going to love this. The topic of this show that we did, they write books about synchronicity and explaining how everything in the paranormal world operates under a level of synchronicity. And I'm like, and now I sit there and I'm looking at, like, you having similar experiences that I'm having. And I'm like, synchronicity.
Yeah.
We're having stories that I can share and you can relate to. You don't have
Hmm.
an experience, but you still can relate to. Synchronistic. That it
Yeah.
unfolded today
Yeah.
in this
And just
time.
our pictures, our backgrounds. Look how similar those are. You have the ocean
Yeah.
on both of them. You have a little island with a mountain. Yeah.
So it really starts to make you sit there and realize, as much as we've learned, we're still a fraction of what's really out there. And as much as we like to think we're open and aware to everything, there is still so much more to be aware of. And I have a new viewpoint of, people who say, I'm experts of this in the paranormal field. I used to think that's impossible. There is no experts because, there's no actual science to what we do. But now I honestly, though, have to say, with talking with some of my guests recently and thinking about this synchronistic principle and everything, I'm like, if somebody has put in 30 years, let's say, of utilizing this technique and doing these researches and investigations and everything, who am I not to say they're not an expert? They're certainly more of an expert than I am in it. I couldn't tell you anything about what they're doing. And
Right,
so,
right.
maybe there are experts. And if you found like I'm sure the guy who or lady who created the Estes method when they first came out and shared it with everybody, it's like everybody was like, well, even though you maybe have been investigating for a week, you're the expert of this technique, hence expert. And
Yeah,
so there is no time frame, I guess, to be. I think it's just how you feel about yourself and how confident you are in what you're doing.
that's a
Would I
possible.
say I'm an expert podcaster? No,
No.
but I can help people start a podcast. And so, therefore, maybe could say, semi expert. But then I
I'd say
sit there and,
knowledgeable.
yeah,
I would say
well,
more knowledgeable and not necessarily expert with the paranormal because there's so much out there that they're just, I know, even though you've been doing it for 30 some plus years, there's got to be more out there they haven't experienced. So I would say they're very knowledgeable.
actually, you're right. And where I was going with it was, why do we put human labels on a abnormal, not human experience where we're talking about we're talking to potentially alternate dimensions, alternate timelines, other, realms, and we're going to sit there and say we're going to define you in human terms. I'm like, I don't think that works. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I think that's something somewhat that we kind of need to step away from and not and stop labeling everything we come across in human terms. And when I'm talking about in human terms, I'm meaning if we come across a negative energy, there are people out there that'll throw the demon word out. And probably I'll safely say 6 out of 10 of those people have never actually experienced demonic energy. It's rare, in my opinion. It's out there, but it's not as frequent as everybody seems to make it be. And so I'm not going to discount people who have experienced it and say their experience is wrong. It's theirs. But I would say we need to stop identifying what we don't know in terms that we think help make it understandable, because we could be feeling the energy of saying something in a hurry. And we're like, oh, this person's afraid. He's doing this. And it could be a mouse, a ghost mouse. What does a ghost mouse do? It scurries around everywhere. That's its natural path. So we've now created an energy that could be an animal going about its normal everyday life and made another spirit being of that energy and saying, well, they're in a rush. They must be afraid. They must be this. They must be that. No, they weren't. And so that's where I'm like, we need to take a step back and stop identifying stuff we can't identify.
Go with the facts then. Go with the facts and not what the ego is telling you.
Not what you think it is. And I
Hmm.
have no qualms, if you're like going, oh, I feel a dark energy and it's feeling this and I think it's this. As long as you're stating it's a thought and it's an opinion, that's
Yeah.
fine. But if you're stating it as fact, I'm like, you better have 100% knowledge that that is what you're calling it, because how do we know? I mean, it's not like we can sit there and park the screen and go, oh, you're right, it is, this or that. And you
Right.
are seeing what you're seeing. Yeah, we can totally, we have proof right here.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Michael, we've been on for a while now.
Yeah.
So, I think this is a good time to kind of say goodbye. I know you could come on again. You can always come on again because I know we have stories all over the place. So,
Oh, yeah.
um, yeah, you're always welcome back. But I think this is kind of time. So, thank you so much for being on the show again and hope to have you back.
Yes, I'd be happy to come back and thank you for giving me the space.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So if anyone else out there has a story you would like to share, email me lighttalk423@gmail.com. And while you're at it, click on the like, share, and subscribe buttons down below. And we will see everybody next time. Bye.
Bye bye.